What's up, guys? Welcome back to Beyond the Arc. This is episode 6 of the podcast. So much to talk about today. It's been a crazy, just about the best start to an offseason you can ask for. I actually wanted to get this episode out like 3 or 4 days ago, but I've been out of town, so I haven't been able to record because there's just so much that's happened these last couple of days. And, even with the draft stuff going on, there's still a lot of stuff outside of that happening. But we're gonna get into all of that today. If you enjoy this video, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. Also, go check out all the other episodes as well. The support is much appreciated. We'll start today by talking about one of the two major trades that happened before the draft even started. And the first one we'll talk about is the Wizards deciding to, they're going to be the busiest team in this offseason, and they decide to trade Kristaps Porzingis to the Boston Celtics as a part of a 3-team deal. Originally, this trade was actually supposed to be the Celtics, Wizards, and Clippers, and then the Clippers were going to get Malcolm Brogdon from the Celtics, but they were concerned about his injury status. They didn't know if he was okay or not. They didn't feel comfortable successfully making that trade without knowing his injury status, so they backed out of the 3-team deal. But the Wizards and the Celtics were still determined to make the trade possible, so the Memphis Grizzlies step right in and they make the trade possible. Full details: the Celtics landed Kristaps Porzingis, the 25th pick in this year's draft, which the draft's already happened, and then they landed a 2024 first-round pick via the Golden State Warriors. The Grizzlies got in return Marcus Smart, which I'll talk about later. It's very interesting. I did not see that coming at all. But the Wizards got Tyus Jones, Danilo Gallinari, Mike Muscala, and the 35th pick in this year's draft. So, a lot to look at, a lot to unpack there. I don't think anybody really saw this trade, happening. Obviously, Boston fans are devastated by, the loss of Marcus Smart, who's been there his whole career. Boston fans really did love this guy. And, I saw it so many Celtics fans are just so heartbroken by, him going. And, they're saying, Memphis, please treat him good. But I like this move for the Celtics. I like the addition of Porzingis. I think it makes them a more, spaced out team. I think it makes, it opens up, a lot of space for Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown to operate and to score. The Celtics, you look at, their team now. Malcolm Brogdon can run the point guard, with Marcus Smart being out. They're going to need someone to step in, and Malcolm Brogdon's unbelievable. He's a really good player, especially he was coming off the bench for the Celtics, but he shouldn't have been. He's a really, really good player. But then you look at their two bigs, and you see it's Al Horford and Robert Williams, who they kind of ran, a little bit of both of them. Probably both got about 20-something minutes a game, but they're both kind of the same bigs in that they're defensive-minded. They're very defensive-minded. The only difference really is that Al Horford can stretch the floor a little bit better than Rob Williams can. But I feel like they're both the same exact style of center and how they play, and they play very defensive-minded, and they're two very good defenders. But the opposite of that is someone who is very long, got a long wingspan, and can score the basketball, and that is Kristaps Porzingis. I think it adds a completely different element to the Celtics. I think it really does help them. There's been a lot of mixed opinions about it, but I think this trade is good for the Celtics. Kendrick Perkins thinks that they're the immediate favorites in the East, at least, to, for next season. And I don't know how I feel about that. I feel like, the Bucks still have the edge on them just a little bit, but this was definitely a great move for the Celtics. I feel like they're really trying to find their championship team and really capitalize while they have Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum on their roster. And I think Porzingis adds, a great element of scoring. He's 7'3". The dude can, shoot the three. He can score at all levels. A little bit of concern with his defense, but like I said earlier, you have Rob Williams and Al Horford still on the roster who are very defensive-minded. So I think this addition works. And, you had to lose Marcus Smart, obviously, which is it's a tough thing to do. You don't want to trade a guy like Marcus Smart, who planned on finishing his career in Boston. He already said that. And, a guy who's been there all of his life and, really was, one of the heart and soul to this Celtics team. But sometimes it's a business. You got to do what you got to do to put yourself in the best possible situation to win a championship, and that's what the Celtics did. And I like this move from them a lot. Looking at the Grizzlies side of it, this is really interesting. I mean, really interesting. They lose Tyus Jones, obviously, but they gain a guy of like Marcus Smart, who I really like this. I weirdly like it. At first I was kind of confused by it. I was kind of like, why would the Grizzlies want Marcus Smart? But we know the Grizzlies situation. Ja Morant's going to be suspended the first 25 games of next season. So Marcus Smart can play that point guard role. But even after Ja comes back, I feel like Marcus Smart can still play a very, very good role with this team. I feel like he's one defensive player of the year, and this Memphis Grizzlies team is about to be one hell of a defensive team. Obviously, they have the back-to-back defensive player of the years, Jaren Jackson and Marcus Smart on their team now. So I feel like they're going to be a very, very good defensive team, probably the best in the league. And I feel like Marcus Smart kind of adds that, Marcus Smart and Ja Morant will kind of operate as a guard duo that they complement each other's games. They're kind of opposite in ways. Ja's really, flashy, really explosive, really athletic, and then Marcus Smart can kind of, slow things down, play really, really good defense, ability to still knock down the shot. And Marcus Smart is still, he's still young. He's not young, but he's still he's not to the point where he's declining or anything like that. So I actually like this for the Grizzlies. I thought about it at first that I wouldn't like it because it just didn't really make sense to me why they would want a guy like Marcus Smart. But now looking at it, I like it. Obviously, he's going to play a good role while Ja Morant's suspended. But even when he comes back, I feel like they can still work together, and I feel like they're going to, like I said earlier, be really, really, really good defensively. Obviously, they're losing Dillon Brooks. They said they're not re-signing him, which, I mean, there could be a lot of reasons for that. Dillon Brooks has been the talk of the NBA since his whole LeBron situation. Even before that, he seems to talk trash just about to everybody in the NBA, so there's a lot of talk there, but we'll see what else the Grizzlies do. I didn't like how the Grizzlies drafted this year. They didn't really have good picks, but I didn't like their selections this year, but we'll see what else they do in this offseason, see if they can add any more pieces. I mean, right now I like where their roster is going. I like, they got Desmond Bane still. They got Steven Adams. They got Brandon Clark. They got Jaren Jackson. It's a good, solid team. So, yeah, I like it. I like to see where the Grizzlies expand and further their roster. Looking at the Wizards side of it, obviously they're going full rebuild. That's been known. They're going, trading Beal, trading Porzingis, and then, obviously I'll talk about it later, but trading Chris Paul, who they just acquired from trading Bradley Beal. But you look at who they get. They get Tyus Jones, who easily, in my opinion, was probably the best backup point guard in the league. This guy, he knows the game. He knows situations. He's a very, very, very good player, and he's very underrated, especially. But they get, Danilo Gallinari, Mike Muscala, 35th. They're just trying to get young players. Danilo Gallinari's not that young, but they're trying to get, players and picks. They're really just going full rebuild, and I think that's exactly what they needed to do. It was not working out in Washington, and you can only, once you go this route, you got to stick with it. You got to just keep going rebuild. So it'll be a while before we see the Wizards, making noise. But like we talked about earlier, they hadn't made noise in a long time. So this is a good move for the Wizards, just to get rid of, a lot of those contracts, a lot of those players. But the next trade the Wizards make, and this is one of the most, this easily is more shocking than the first one I just said. When I read it, I didn't think it was true. I actually got a text about this trade, and I didn't believe it when I saw the person that sent it to me, and then I looked and I was like, wow, this actually happened. The Golden State Warriors acquired CP3 from the Wizards in a package that included Jordan Poole, a protected 2030 first round pick, which means it'll be in the top 20, and a 2027 second-round pick. The Warriors also included Ryan Rollins, a young player, in that trade. This is just the most shocking thing that I think, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. So many things to unpack here. First of all, looking at it from the Wizards side, I love this trade. Jordan Poole is a young guard. He's very, very good. I know he did not have a good, playoff run with the Warriors this season. He took a lot of bad shots. He, went crazy, but I think he's going to thrive on the Wizards. I think he's going to be the guy he can now kind of look at, to be the number one option for the Wizards, scoring the ball. A lot of people said he's going to average like 25 points per game next year and win most improved player, and I could easily see that. I think this is a perfect move for the Wizards, to kind of build their team around a guy like Jordan Poole, who he's obviously, he's not to the point of, and I think deep down, I think Jordan Poole wanted to get away from Golden State. I think obviously the him and Draymond Green drama, that kind of affected him, and I know it affected him. There's not, you can't get punched by your teammate like that, and I know probably all of y'all have seen the clip, but it was bad. And, actually like 30 minutes after he got traded, of course, people decide to look and see if he's still following Draymond Green on Instagram anymore, and he wasn't. So, safe to say he was ready to get out of Golden State, and I think he's going to love Washington. I think he's going to really thrive there and be the number one guy for this young, rebuilding Wizards team. Looking at it on the other side, the Golden State Warriors, it's interesting. I don't know how I feel, to be honest, about it. I don't know if it's a good thing or a bad thing. I'm leaning towards bad thing because simply I just don't see how this works. Obviously, Chris Paul, he's 38. He's not, he doesn't move as well as he used to. Obviously, he's, still a great player. But I guess what the Warriors were looking at as, in this trade, I guess they were looking at Chris Paul and saying, you can now play the facilitator role of you don't even have to look to score. You can just run our offense. Steph Curry doesn't have to bring the ball down the court. He can now work off ball. And, a lot of people are, thinking that this might work, but at the same time, he's not a good defender. Chris Paul's not a good defender at all. He's a slow-paced guy. He slows the offense down, and the Warriors over their whole dynasty have ran a fast-paced motion offense, and that's just not something Chris Paul has been used to. Not saying he can't, adapt and improve and, learn the offense and, start doing that, but that's just not something Chris Paul does. Chris Paul's known for slowing the game down, putting people in situations. That's just not the Warriors' offense at all. So I don't know what they're going to do there. That's another reason I kind of found it weird. I kind of didn't understand this trade. But we'll see what happens. Obviously, no one really knows. I don't know if he's going to start. I don't think he will because, if he starts at point guard, that'll move Steph to shooting guard and then Klay, small forward. And then what do you do about Andrew Wiggins? Do you start Draymond Green? If you start both of them, that's one of the smallest starting lineups in the NBA. And then, Kevon Looney. So I don't know. He may come off the bench, probably will come off the bench. I don't know how he's going to feel about that either. To be honest, just don't really understand this for the Warriors, and they were wanting to trade Jordan Poole. First of all, what I don't understand about, this whole thing is Mike Dunleavy, who is the new GM of the Warriors, said that he plans to keep Jordan Poole for 4 more years at least, and then like 3 days later trades him. And I think deep down he was wanting to trade Jordan Poole because I think he knew Jordan Poole's relationship with Draymond Green. It wasn't good. I think we need to get him, to a place where he can thrive on his own as, the number one. But I think they could have gotten more. Like you could have, I think, if you were already wanting to trade Jordan Poole, I think you could have gotten, like, is CP really the guy that's going to make that difference? Like, is he really the player that's going to, change this like team? And obviously the Warriors are going to be in it every year with Steph Curry and that core group, but I just don't understand. I don't think CP3 is their guy to look at and be like, okay, this guy's going to bring us going to help us win a championship. I just don't see it. I just don't see how he fits in their offense. I just don't see how him and Steph Curry, their games complement each other. But I could be completely wrong. I guess it's just something we're all going to have to see. It's going to be really interesting. I cannot wait to watch a Warriors game this upcoming season to see how Chris Paul fits in this, system, because it's, like I said, it's a system that he's never really played in. He's always used to slowing the game down, and the Warriors, they don't do that. They run. You see Steph Curry, he's always on the move. He's always running to different spots. He's always Draymond Green's getting the ball, and a lot of people are saying, well, Draymond Green's going to probably end up leaving too. I don't think he will. I think, a report just came out the other day that said that Draymond was looking for a 3-year extension. Like I said earlier, when, he declined his player option, everybody acted like he was going to leave. That doesn't mean he's going to leave. He's probably just reconstructing his contract, wanting to get an extension, and he probably will. I couldn't see him playing anywhere but Golden State. But like I said earlier, I just don't understand. I think this makes no sense for the Warriors. I don't know why they would, lose a guy like Jordan Poole, who, yes, they were wanting to trade. I just feel like you could have traded him for a player that could help benefit your team more than Chris Paul could. Again, I could be completely wrong, but that's just my opinion on it. Looking at those two trades, right before the draft, it was just like, it was crazy to see, that happening, because it's just so random. Like, it was just two really, really random trades, but that's a part of the offseason that you love and that, as an NBA fan, you look forward to. But looking at the draft now, obviously, it was a successful night. Everybody, was happy. I'll say this about the draft. Obviously, the San Antonio Spurs, they win easily because they got, Victor Wembanyama, generational talent, as everybody's calling him. He's truly has the upside that to be great. And I think a lot of people think that, obviously I talked about in last episode, there hasn't been a prospect this hyped since LeBron James. So Spurs win, they get Wemby, and obviously he's already been in San Antonio a little bit. The fans love him there. He's getting greeted by everybody. He actually did a shoot around with like a bunch of cameras around him in the Spurs gym, and a bunch of people were clowning him for missing a lot of shots, but that's a lot of pressure. You don't understand how much pressure is on his shoulders, to be great, because everybody's expecting him to be, this unbelievable, sensation straight out of France. And this is a different, that transition from playing in France to playing in the NBA is a big transition. And I think people need to understand that and give him some time to really adapt to the NBA. But once he does, no telling where he can go and what he can do. To the Hornets pick Brandon Miller. This was, a lot to be talked about here, because the Hornets fans, and I don't know if y'all have seen this video, it's been kind of, throughout social media the last, couple days, but when they selected, Brandon Miller, all the Hornets fans booed him, and I don't really understand why. Obviously, they wanted Scoot Henderson, which, yes, Scoot Henderson is a phenomenal player, may have more talent than Brandon Miller, but Brandon Miller fits on this Hornets team much better than Scoot Henderson would. I don't think Scoot Henderson and LaMelo Ball would have worked out at all. I think they would have been two of kind of the same player. I think they would have clashed. I don't think it would have worked out. Brandon Miller fits so much better on this Hornets team, and I like Brandon Miller. He's a big guy. The Hornets need bigger guys. They already have the guard play. They're good on guards. They needed Brandon Miller. He fits in much better. So I don't know why they were all booing. Obviously, Scoot Henderson is Scoot Henderson, but at the same time, Brandon Miller fits so much better on this team. Then the Blazers, obviously after that Brandon Miller pick, they go grab Scoot Henderson, and this, was a phenomenal pick. Obviously, it was the obvious pick. Now looking at, them drafting Scoot Henderson, where are the Blazers going? Like, genuinely, I could not tell you. There was so much talk about, what the Blazers might do. They might trade the third pick to go acquire a guy like Paul George or go acquire a guy like Bam Adebayo, someone to pair with Damian Lillard to build a championship team. Well, they didn't do that. So now they drafted Scoot Henderson, and they did that. I think I forgot who said this, but I saw this somewhere. They did it for the good of the franchise, and that was a huge move by their franchise. They could have traded that pick away, but they realized for the good of the franchise, we need to draft Scoot Henderson because he's not just any third overall pick. He has already the mindset of he's the best player in the league, and that's a great mindset to have. A lot of people call it, arrogance. I think it's just him being confident. I think it's just him being, like, I'm that guy. No one's going to stop me. He even said recently that he thinks Damian Lillard should stay in Portland because if we combine our games, it's over. You got to have confidence like that, and I think Scoot Henderson has the whole package. Obviously, he can't shoot the ball really well, but with time, his shot will develop with, age, with experience. I think he could be potentially one of the, one of the best third overall picks we've ever seen. So great stuff from the Blazers, obviously picking him, but I still don't understand what direction they're taking. Are they going to, build around Damian Lillard and Scoot? Are they going to trade Dame and just try to build players around Scoot Henderson? Obviously it's a tough decision because, Dame, there's been so many different reports about Damian Lillard if he's staying. There was a report earlier this week where they shut down all the trades regarding Damian Lillard. Then, there was a report earlier that said Dame has serious interest in joining Miami Heat. Then there was another report that said Damian Lillard was going to wait around and see what the Trailblazers do in free agency and see what kind of team they build. I don't know. It's all just kind of, chaotic at this point. I don't know what Damian Lillard is really wanting. Obviously, he wants to stay in Portland. He just does not want to wait around. His career is slowly, he's not obviously still an unbelievable player, but, he's getting older. Damian Lillard doesn't want to wait around and watch this team rebuild and not have a chance to compete for a title, which is why I think he should obviously want out. I think he should. Everybody says the Miami Heat are literally a perfect fit for Dame. Could not ask for a better fit, and the fit for the Heat too. Not only Dame, they would just be a perfect match in my opinion. So that's why I think he should go to Miami and he should ask out of Portland, but we'll see what they do in free agency. Maybe he ends up staying. Maybe they end up making a crazy trade. Who knows? We will see. But obviously 4 and 5, the Thompson brothers from Overtime Elite. Amen Thompson goes to the Houston Rockets, and then Azar goes to the Detroit Pistons. I like this. A lot of people are saying that, these two are, going to be bust almost, and I don't agree with that. I think that, when you have athletes like the Thompson brothers joining your team, and I really like this for the Rockets, Amen and Jalen Green, who was the second pick in last year's draft. I think they're going to be a really dynamic young backcourt, really athletic guys. Then you look at the Pistons side of it, getting Azar, pairing him with guys like Cade Cunningham, with, Jaden Ivey, with guys like Jalen Duran, just guys like that, young guys, this young cores of teams. I really like this for both teams, looking at it like that. Some grades I'll give, some, winners of the draft. My opinion, hands down, Rockets were winners of this draft. Getting Amen Thompson at number 4, I love. But the biggest one of all, getting Cam Whitmore at 20. Cam Whitmore, at one point was projected to be in the top 5. But he fell reportedly because of poor workouts and poor interviews. I'm not really sure what happened there, but he fell down in the rankings, and I just but to get him at 20 really shocked me. I'm so shocked he fell that far. I thought he would go between 10 and 15, but the fact that he fell to 20, the Rockets, that is an unbelievable steal for them. I love that pick. Cam Whitmore is a phenomenal player. I think he could be easily the steal of the draft. Obviously, I think the Spurs are winners because they got Victor Wembanyama. I've talked about him. I think the Mavericks are winners easily. They obviously They decided to trade with the Oklahoma City Thunder for that 10th pick. The Oklahoma City Thunder traded up. They had 12. They traded up to 10 to get Cason Wallace out of Kentucky. The Mavericks went back to 12, but they also got rid of Davis Bertans. They sent him to Oklahoma City, got rid of his bad contract. He had a bad contract. They got rid of him, and they drafted their guy, Derek Lively II from Duke. He will fit in perfectly with this team. And, they needed rim protection. The Mavericks need this. They don't have a solid center, that, is a really good rim protector. Derek Lively fits that role perfectly. He's someone that can come in. He won't score a lot, obviously, his rookie season, but they have people, that can do that. He'll come in, he'll run the pick and roll with Luka, he'll get rebounds, and he will rim protect, and that's exactly what they need. They also drafted Olivier Maxence Prosper. I think that's his name. I really don't know how you say it. But he is also a extremely good wing defender. I think he's probably one of the best wing defenders in the draft. So it's clear what the Mavericks were trying to improve, which is defense and rim protecting, and that's exactly what they needed, and that's exactly what they got out of this draft. I think they had an unbelievable draft. They should be very happy. You look at there's other winners out there. There's, I love the Blazers draft because they got Scoot Henderson. They also drafted Chris Murray, who is Keegan Murray from the Kings' brother. I like that pick. I love the Magic. The Magic, their draft was very good. They got Anthony Black and they got Jet Howard out of Michigan. Two extremely good players that I think fit the Magic perfectly. And then I love the Raptors draft. They only had one pick, but they use it to perfection. They got Grady Dick out of Kansas, who I think fits their team perfectly. I think they struggled on outside shooting. They've been needing to improve their three-point shooting and their ability to stretch the floor as a team. Grady Dick fits that role perfectly. He's probably one of the best three-point shooters in the draft. Fits that Mavericks role perfectly, and his outfit was seriously something else. If you haven't seen it, it was like a red sparkling. So he was prepared. He was prepared to get picked. It's almost funny that he wore red and he got drafted by the Raptors, but I think that's a perfect fit for them. Some losers of the draft, I would say, are obviously I talked about it in like the Grizzlies draft, but the Utah Jazz, I don't think they had a good draft. I think who they drafted was a guy named Taylor Hendricks, and they drafted him at number 9. This guy, he's a pretty tall guy. He's a forward, out of UCF, and he's a good complement to, he plays the same position as Lauri Markkanen, who, he's a good complement to Lauri Markkanen, but at the same time, they had a, all defensive player in, Walker Kessler, who out of Auburn, and he's, a very, very big guy who kind of does the same thing that Taylor Hendricks does. And I don't really understand how Taylor Hendricks is going to fit. It feels like all the Jazz's good young players are playing the same position. I just feel like it's going to cloud up a bunch of space. I feel like it's just not going to work. Him and Lauri Markkanen, I feel like it's not really going to work together. They're the same position, but they're different players. But I just don't see how this all works out. I don't understand why they picked him, but that may just be my opinion. I just didn't like that pick. For Taylor Hendricks is a very good player, but he lacks athleticism, he lacks scoring, and I think the Jazz needed that over someone who can, play defense and get rebounds. I think they already had that. So that's just my opinion, though. We'll see what happens, obviously, with that. But looking at the rest of the news and the action that's happened, obviously, I think yesterday, Woj comes on and reports that a trade has happened. The Atlanta Hawks, this was after the draft. Obviously, all the stuff that happened during the draft, we look at, I guess I probably should, talk about who all the Pacers drafted. The Pacers drafted Bilal Coulibaly at 7. The Wizards drafted, who was then traded to the Wizards. They traded up. The Wizards actually is the ones who got Bilal Coulibaly. He could end up being a good player. I don't think he has the talent yet. And then you look at the the Pacers getting Jarris Walker. Jazz draft Taylor Hendricks, and then the Mavericks and the Thunder swapped. So that kind of rounds out the top. And then you look at the 14th pick, which was rounding out the lottery picks of Jordan Hawkins. I love this pick from the Pelicans. I absolutely love this guy. Jordan Hawkins, if you watched March Madness last year and you watched UConn play, you could tell this guy literally didn't feel like he missed a shot. Perfect player for the Pelicans. They needed someone like this. They needed a guy who could come in and just shoot the lights out. And, he's a really, really good young guard. I love this pick for the Pelicans. That kind of rounds out the top 14. So ending with the draft stuff, a couple of days pass and you see breaking news in the trade department as the Atlanta Hawks decide to ship John Collins to the Utah Jazz for Rudy Gay and a future second-round pick. This was shocking. This was really interesting. I knew the Hawks were trying to get rid of John Collins. They've been trying to for years. So I guess it's a win for them to get rid of their, that contract. But honestly, they didn't get much back. They got Rudy Gay and a future second-round pick, and it's so sad to see John Collins go like that because there was so much more hype around John Collins. There was so much more, there. A tweet that recently, has been spiraling all over social media was when they tweeted a picture of him and Kevin Durant standing by each other, and it said former MVP and future MVP. Obviously, John Collins hasn't gotten anywhere near MVP level. So it's sad to see, how they just shipped him off like that. I feel like, Atlanta fans did like him, but his contract was bad. They're trying to free up money, trying to free up cap space. This was a smart move, but I feel like they could have gotten a little bit more. Looking at it from the Jazz perspective, getting a guy like John Collins, I don't know how, like I said earlier, it feels like all they have is forwards. Obviously the Jazz exceeded expectations last season. They obviously didn't make the playoffs, but a lot of people expected them to finish dead last. Lauri Markkanen shoots out of nowhere, wins most improved player. He played unbelievable the whole season, and a lot of people didn't even expect that. So he's now a star in Utah, a fan favorite in Utah, and it's, going to be interesting to see how they work together, how, John Collins fits in that role of working alongside Lauri, and we'll obviously see what they do about Jordan Clarkson too. A lot of teams are going to be gunning for him if he decides to test out free agency. So a lot to look at there, a lot to see what's going to happen with Utah and what's going to happen with Jordan Clarkson. But I like this move for both teams. I just feel like Atlanta could have done a little more. Sad to see John Collins go for that little. But we'll see what happens there. In other news, Chris Middleton from the Milwaukee Bucks declined his $40 million player option and is becoming a free agent. This, was reported, about four days ago. And, I honestly, probably just another one of those Draymond Green situations where he's going to retool that contract, probably get an extension. Why would he want to leave Milwaukee? They're a championship contender if they keep their roster the way it is. So I know that Chris Middleton isn't a stupid guy. I know he wouldn't do something like that. He'll probably just retool that contract and get an extension and look to compete for more championships alongside Giannis Antetokounmpo. But that is pretty much all we have for this episode, guys. Obviously, there's still going to be a lot of stuff coming up, a lot of, trade rumors. We'll obviously see what happens with Damian Lillard, what happens with the Blazers, see what they do about their whole situation. We'll see how they improve their roster, if that will make Dame want to stay or if it'll make him want to ask out and get traded somewhere where he can have an opportunity to win a championship. As an NBA fan, I love Damian Lillard, and I really do want to see him in a place where he can compete. So I hope either the Trailblazers do something to improve their roster to a point where they can, compete for a championship, or Damian Lillard asked out and he gets traded to the Miami Heat. I just feel like that'd be such a perfect fit for Dame, but I guess we will see what happens. Thank you guys for watching this video. Like I said earlier, if you enjoyed it, please give it a like and subscribe to the channel. I'll be back with episode 7 really soon, probably when something crazy happens. You know how this off season works, but I will see you guys then. Thank you guys for watching.